All right. Good morning to everyone here. Good morning to all the online students as well as the e-learning students. Glad to have all of you. Hope each of you all are doing well. Right. Okay. So where were we? Where did we end last week? It's always a difficult question, no? This question. Yeah. So where did we end last week?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. We finished the last skill, which was influencing and initiating action. That is what we finished last week. Okay, which means we have come to the end of learning the skills, learning the process. Okay, that does not still make us all complete counselors. There's a lot of practice we need. Okay, but we're moving on to understand other areas of other situations or issues when it comes to counseling. So it's not just about the techniques or the skills or the process, but we also need to learn or come to some understanding about where do we use some of these situations. Okay, so just I hope you all have bought your phones. Yeah, you all have bought your phones. Okay. And we're going to get to the next part of the course, which is we're going to be looking at particular issues in counseling. All right. So different common situations or issues that you may be presented with where you have to use skills of counseling. Okay. So one part is knowing how to counsel. The second part is building your knowledge and awareness on different situations, particular issues. So today we're going to be looking at two. We're going to be looking at mental health as well as issues with marriage and family. So it's not a whole comprehensive look. It's just like a bird's eye view that we're looking, just for us to understand that at least when you are dealing with people, to identify that this can be a mental health issue, this can be something to do with marriage and family, this can be to do with parenting, something to do with grief, abuse, just for you to identify what issue you may be dealing with. Okay, so I'm hoping to complete mental health as well as marriage and family today. Okay, so let's move in. Okay, so when you look at the word, have you heard the word well-being? You've heard of the word well-being? Okay, what do you think is well-being? What's well-being? Sorry? Total wellness. Okay, that's well-being. Okay, any other way that you can, any other?
It will depend on each person what they think their wealth is. For some, wealth means money, inheritance. For some, wealth will mean good life altogether.
Okay. So Natasha, the word was well-being. I think you heard it as wealth. It's well-being.
Well-being. Okay, sorry.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so what do you see as well-being? Right. Okay. So she said it includes a lot of things. It includes many, many dimensions or many, many areas. Wonderful. Yes. So when you're looking at well-being, you want to add something?
Just like the welfare or the good of the other person.
Good. Okay. Something that is good, something that is optimum. So when we look at well-being, we're looking at how there are different areas in our lives can work to some optimum. Okay. So if you look at the slide, there is what I've shown you here is dimensions of wellness. There are 8 dimensions of wellness. Okay. So when you're looking at wellness in the totality, One among that is, if you would notice, is it is divided here. It's spiritual, it's emotional, it's social, but there is also some part of mental health that comes in. So we're looking at wellness as a whole, and there are different factors that affect your well-being, different factors that affect your mental well-being. And there are 8 things that are written here. So there is physical, there's physical, environmental. Environmental means to do with all that is around you, okay, like the weather, the water, your housing, all right. Financial, all to do with things with finance. Occupational is what you are doing, your work that is assigned to you. Social, that is relationships. Emotional, spiritual, intellectual. So think of this like a balancing act where there are many different factors that actually make up your well-being. So this is what this is called is the wellness wheel, and it's a way that helps you look at different aspects of life to see how they contribute to your mental wellness. So it's a if you're looking at wellness, it is positive health or positive mental health and the absence of some disease or absence of an illness. Okay, so there are these eight areas of wellness that you're looking about. Now, I want you to think of this like a wheel. You've seen a cycle wheel. What do you see in the cycle wheel? There are spokes in the cycle wheel, right? Now, if the wheel has to run well, the spoke should be, it should be complete, right? Yeah, so it should either be complete or at least most of the spokes should be complete. If all the spokes are not there, the wheel will crumble. So think of it that way, that in our life, there are all of these 8 aspects that we have to pay attention to. You cannot completely let go of any one of those aspects. All of them have to work well together. So the more optimum that these different aspects work, the better your sense of mental health. Okay? So in these 8 areas, is there anything that you don't understand? I think they're all self-explanatory. You understand all of them? Intellectual is your ability to reason, to think, to learn, right? So that's why it's important to keep learning, not just like studies, but anything like learning an instrument, learning a game, learning some new concept. And how do you do that? Is through gaining knowledge, maybe through reading. So it keeps our brain sharp. It keeps our mind alert. So to keep learning or to keep doing things that promote learning is what is part of that intellectual. Okay? I think the rest of the ones are pretty explainable. Okay. Now, what are some of the factors that affect our mental health? So if you look at this diagram, there are 3 main factors: biological, psychological, as well as social. All right. Now, these are all 3 areas affect the way that our mental health progresses. So if we look at biological, there are some of these things that you see here. Maybe some of them that are most familiar in here is physical exercise, nutrition, right? That if you're exercising, how does physical exercise and nutrition help your mental health? Does exercise and nutrition help your mental health? How?
So, the wholeness. It's like if you don't have that element, there is definitely something like an X factor that is missing. In
Okay.
other words, you can say it refreshes your mind, it takes away the toxins, it brings you that happiness quotient that,
Okay. Right.
you're fit.
Yeah. So every time you exercise, there is a hormone that is
Hormone released, yeah.
there is a release called as endorphin.
Mm.
And every time, like if you have had a good walk, or let's say you've climbed up the stairs a couple of times, you may feel tired, but then you suddenly begin to feel like a clear headedness, right? Or you go play a game, you feel a little more happier, you feel a little better. That's because the body generates some hormones that actually makes you feel better. All right? Even nutrition. What happens the more that you eat sweets? Huh? Yeah, no, to your mind. Sorry, brain fog. Okay. So initially you may feel a lot more alert, but then slowly, as soon as the glucose comes down, you're going to begin to feel very, very lethargic. But when you eat good food, when you eat food that is nutritious, it keeps your body and your mind also very, very alert. All right? So this is probably one of the things that you, okay, but there are many other things that affect your mental health. One is what we call as genetic predisposition. All right. Now, this is, remember, this is through medical science, is what I'm sharing with you. But when we come to understand how we live in the spiritual, we are not bound by any of this. Okay. So, genetic predisposition is, let's say, someone in the family had some kind of a mental illness, there are greater chances, or you are greatly predisposed to having that condition. All right. So that's why when someone has a mental health issue, one of the things you do check is whether the family or any other family member, maybe the parents or the other siblings, have had a mental health condition. Okay, because they can be genetically predisposed to it. Okay. Other issues of what we talk, when we say neurochemistry, there are a lot of chemicals in our brain. Those neurochemicals actually help us to feel happy, feel sad, feel excited. They contribute to the way that we are feeling and experiencing. So when there are changes in those neurochemicals, it can affect the way that we feel or we think or we behave. All right. So these are all biological factors. Okay. And yes, if you take substances, like say alcohol, drugs, does it affect mental health? Yeah, it significantly affects mental health. Okay. So these are some of the areas of biological, how they contribute to your mental health. What about psychological? Psychological is your personality, the way that you are, your emotional health, the way that you think, the way that you cope, some of how you see life. All of that affects your psychological well-being. Okay, like for example, if I didn't think too much about myself, it can affect my mental health. Okay, if every time I go through some, let's say, some difficulty, I always turn to some bad coping, like let's say maybe I drink, it can affect my mental health. So the way that I am in my personality, in my psychological makeup, also affects my mental health. Okay, and of course social, which is my environment around, my family, my culture, the beliefs that I have, the support that I have alongside with me, my status, my economic status, whether I'm rich or I'm poor, I'm middle class, whether I'm disabled or I'm able, all of that affects mental health. Okay, so when you look at mental health, it's just not one factor, but it is it's a mash of all of these factors that affect somebody's mental health. Okay? Are we okay? All right. Next one. Okay. So I'm going to ask you certain questions, not questions, bring about certain statements and tell me what you think. Mental illness is untreatable. Is it a myth or is it a fact? What about the rest? Huh?
Some could be true, some could be false. Like if it is self-inflicted, maybe then you can help. But
Okay.
if it is, but if it is something physical, psychological, yes, we can help. But if it is something physical, we won't be able to.
Okay. So mental illnesses are largely treatable. Okay. So there are different ways of how it can be treated, right? It can be through medication, it can be through counseling, it can be through spiritual deliverance. It can be treated. Okay. It's not a lost cause, right? They can be treated to some optimum level. Okay. Lack of willpower causes mental illness. Is it a myth or a fact? Lack of willpower. If you don't have willpower, then it'll come and catch you. Okay.
Yeah,
It's
I
a myth.
think it is true.
It's a myth. Okay.
Oh.
It's a myth. So we may be the strongest of people, but we may be ridden with fear and anxiety, right? Or we may do all things really well,
Brown.
but we may have signs of depression. All right. So
Great.
lack of willpower is not what causes mental illness. All right.
Niche.
Marriage can cure mental illness. Everyone is sure about that, right? Yes. Marriage cannot cure mental illness. Okay. If someone is married with a mental illness and with a person who doesn't have no awareness of mental illness, it can cause a whole lot of trouble again. Okay, so marriage will not cure mental illness. Okay, all right. Mentally ill patients belong to the hospitals. Mentally ill people belong to hospitals.
Not always, sister.
Okay, that's true. They may need to be treated for a while, and depending again what the condition is, but they can even be maintained at home very well. All right. Okay. Sorry? It's a myth. Yes. They don't belong to hospitals. They may need to go to a hospital, but they don't belong there. Okay. Mental health problems are only seen in illiterate poor people. Myth? Yes. Okay. It's mental health can affect anybody anytime. People with mental illness can never be productive or do normal work like normal people. Sorry? Some is true, is it? Some cases it's a fact. Okay. All right. So, somebody said myth and someone said fact. Okay. Now, if they are helped and treated as soon as possible, or regularly with support and help, they can be as productive as anyone else. Sometimes you don't know who is mentally ill. Maybe the one sitting next to you is mentally ill and you don't know. Right? So it's not true that they can never be productive. The faster support and treatment is got and help is sought, the outcome is always better. But if mental health continues to, if it goes untreated, unchecked, then productivity can be less. All right? They may not be as efficient as someone who is able to do normal work. Okay, mental illness is unlike physical illness. The illness is really all in the person's head. Okay, I need more people to commit. Yeah, mind. That's what it means. Okay, so it is a myth. Okay, people truly struggle with mental health. Unlike physical illness, you can't see it. There's no tangible hurt, wound, broken body, blood test that shows you. In mental health, you don't have that. It's only through reports, and how you notice is that they're not able to function. But it can be as severe, or in fact even more severe than physical illness, all right, because it affects the mind, it affects their regular functioning. So that is a myth. It's not in their head, it is something that they're truly experiencing. Okay, mentally ill people have weak characters since they can't cope with the world in the same way that the rest of us can.
Myth.
Okay, that's a myth. Yes, they're not weak people, and it's not that they're unable to cope. It's an illness that has come by. All right, next. Once a psychiatric patient, always a psychiatric patient. Okay, that's a myth. That's not true. There are many people who've gone through severe mental health issues but have bounced back and lead very normal and productive lives. Children don't suffer from psychiatric illnesses. It's a myth. Children as small as 3 and 4 can have psychiatric issues. Mental health disorders are a result of bad parenting. Myth. Yes, that's not true. Okay, it's not true at all. Mental illnesses are contagious. Contagious means it can be transmitted to somebody else. Someone sits next to you.
Myth.
It's a myth.
It's a myth, right? Attempting suicide is a sign of cowardice.
Myth.
Yeah.
Statement. It could be a fact, no? So, as in, if one person who's mentally ill keeps narrating and keeps sharing the other person who's perfectly fine, it can slowly start playing on their mind also, no? It can be biased wise. It can. Don't you think it can be a little contagious?
Contagious meaning, okay,
It's
you're
spreading.
saying through influence, is
Yeah,
it?
continuously. If X is having a mental issue, Y does not have any mental issue,
Okay.
but Y keeps listening, adhering to that, and X keeps pouring out his bucket of mental illness, challenge, and thing. And if that keeps playing on the Y person's mind, if he's being empathetic, sympathetic is different. Don't you think it is slowly?
So that may not be because of the other person. That may be an influence and a factor, but it's coming because it's coming as a result of their own factors, not because someone else has done it. It's because of my own personal psychological factors, social factors, it's my own factors, right? Like, I'll give you an example. Let's say someone who is a caretaker for someone who is significantly mentally ill. I'm talking about major mental illnesses, okay? So it can be very draining on a caretaker. They can develop not the same illness, but they can develop depression or anxiety. That can happen. That's because they're in the role of caretaking. So it's not a direct influence, but a secondary influence as a result of caretaking or a result of being someone who's a listener. That can happen. Okay.
Ma'am, can you use psychiatric and mental illness interchangeably?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Okay. Attempting suicide is a sign of cowardice. Myth. Okay, what is it a sign of then, if you're saying it's a myth?
Someone who
Sign of
feels he
fear.
reached the end of the rope.
Yes, it can be. In fact, we're going to be doing suicide in a couple of classes. Suicide, almost, I think it's the count, I think some 60 or 70% of people who commit suicide are under depression. Okay? And that's why they do. Or there's a good percentage of people who are using substances, alcohol, drugs. There are those percentage also who commit suicide. So it's not a sign of cowardice. It's usually a mental health issue that makes them attempt suicide. Okay? Mentally ill patients are violent and dangerous. Huh? Myth. Okay. It's only if they are floridly ill or they are, what's the word?
Pushed beyond their limit.
No. Yeah, when they are completely out of reality is when they could be violent and dangerous, right? And we will talk about some of those. Mentally ill means a person has a lack of faith. Myth. It's a myth.
Myth.
Yes. Okay. All right. So let's look at what mental health is. It's a state of well-being in which the person realizes his or her own abilities, cope with normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. This is a definition by the World Health Organization. So what is it? That I'm able to realize that I have some abilities, that I can teach, I can take care of my children, I can do my job. I know that. I can cope with the normal stresses of life. Okay, there are stresses, I'm able to cope with it through some means. I work productively and fruitfully. I come to work every day. I'm able to sustain myself. I'm able to make meaningful situations in my work and able to make a contribution. All right. So this is what how WHO has defined what mental health is. All right. Now, just some facts about mental disorders. Mental health or mental disorders can affect anyone, men, women, children, rich, poor. There is no there's no class. It's not a respecter of class or people or tribe. None. Anyone can experience mental health issues. It's so common that 1 in 5 adults have mental health issues, which means how many of us are here? 10 of us, at least 2 of us at some point of time have probably had some mental health issue. Okay? They don't always look different from the others. Okay, so you can look at each one and say, okay, we all look the same. All right? It can range from common to very, very severe conditions. Now, often when we say mental disorders, what comes to your mind? What's the picture that comes to your mind?
Behavior.
Huh? Mental disorder means mad. See, that's the picture that comes to us. Sorry, Gertrude or Lucy, one of you said something.
About their behavior, how they react, how they present themselves.
Okay. So I remember in one of the classes, I said, when I say mental health or I say mental illness, what comes to you? They say the guy who's, sometimes on the road, you see people talking to themselves or you see someone shouting and, so that's the idea that we have about mental disorders. Yeah, that's not the only yes, it is one, but that's not the only one. So that's why it can range from very, very common to severe conditions. So severe that you can make out even without talking to them, even with just looking, you can make out. Or it can be so common that you just cannot make out. So it can range from not knowing at all to something that seems very, very tangible or very, very open. Okay, it's more than just stress. It's mental health, mental disorders is not stress. Now, if I'm stressed, that means I'm crazy. No, that's not what it is. It can be brief or it can be long term. There are people who may have mental health conditions for a brief while, like especially if you've heard of what we call as postpartum psychosis. That is, after a woman delivers a baby, sometimes they get into depression or sometimes they get into major psychotic illnesses. It's a brief period of time, right? Or people who go through, let's say, a crisis situation, maybe like a catastrophe, like let's say an earthquake or a flood or an accident. there is significant trauma that happens, and then they go through a period of mental health conditions. Okay? Or some form of an adjustment. You just got married, or just had a baby, or there someone financial bankruptcy has happened. There can be certain mental health conditions. So it can be brief, it can be long term. All right? Okay. It affects the quality of life, work, relationships, etc. So the most important thing is how it affects life. They don't eat well, they don't sleep well, they're not able to conduct themselves at work, or within relationships, take on their responsibilities. Okay, it affects the entire family. The effects of stress is on the entire family, and that there are effective forms of treatment, okay, for every kind of a mental health disorder. Okay, so what can a mentally how do you know who's a mentally healthy person? Some of these factors, okay? They can think clearly, all right? They build strong relationships. They can cope with normal stress of life, and they can contribute to the community they live in. That's how you know that a person is mentally healthy. These 4 factors. They can think clearly, have good relationships, cope with normal stresses of life, and can contribute to their community. Okay. What are some signs of good mental health? First and foremost is to be satisfied with who you are. Where does that, what is the root of that? Sorry? Yes, your identity, right? For a person who has their identity in the right place is where, people with good mental health. The minute you move your identity or what you're satisfied with something else that is transient, it changes your perspective of life, right? Okay, to be able to engage in activity that is meaningful, right? Or to have a sense of connection with others, to build good relationship with others is a sign of good mental health. To have a sense of self-control. How do you have self-control? In what areas can you have self-control? Yes, very good. Even in your food, learning how to control what you eat is a sign of good mental health. Okay, I'm glad you thought of that. Okay. Any other signs of good control?
Behavior.
Finances, behavior, emotions, even coping, like is it okay to drink? Is it okay to smoke? When is it that I draw a line? All of that, okay? So all of
Even
that.
anger, controlling anger.
Yes, control of anger, correct. Okay, being able to forgive others is a good sign of mental health. To have hope and optimism about your future. To be tolerant to people and others. To be grateful. To have a sense of humor. This is bought from WHO, okay? What are some factors of good wellness, mental wellness? So these 9 things are things that we can work towards, right? It doesn't need to come to us. You can work towards all of these 9 things, and that's the choice that we are making. Okay, so what's mental illness? It is a condition that has a negative effect on the individual, especially in the way that they think, in the way that they feel, and the way that they behave. 3 areas. If they think, if they think negatively, if they feel negative, or if they behave negative, that's when you begin to understand that there can be some kind of a mental health issue. All right? Okay. What are some symptoms of mental illness? How do you recognize some signs? Okay. One is illogical thinking. If your thinking is not okay, or if it is not in a normal process, like, for example, if you're always thinking about maybe the fight I had in the morning, No, fight I had 10 years ago. I'm only thinking about that for the last 10 years. Is that abnormal? I'm only thinking about a fight that happened 10 years ago. Is that abnormal?
Absolutely.
Yes, it is. Right? That means I have not been able to move past it. I have fixated on something that I should have moved past. Right? So that shows illogical thinking. But there can be other forms of thinking that are called bizarre thinking. Okay? Like in conditions called, mental health condition called as schizophrenia. They have very, very bizarre kind of thoughts. You know, if you listen to them, it can really scare you, because they will be, some of the thoughts that they have is they think that someone's put a chip into their head, someone is reading all their thoughts, or their thoughts are being shown out on TV, right? Or their thoughts are about how the whole world is going to rule them as king. So there are so many things like this that becomes very bizarre and totally is what we call is delusional, okay, which is not reality, right? That's what one of the symptoms of mental illness. When there is high anxiety or nervousness, I'm talking about in a way that completely keeps you away from doing things that are in the normal, can be a symptom of mental illness. When there is a loss of motivation, don't feel like doing anything, just want to sleep, just want to lie down, not cook, not clean, not go out, not bathe, it's a symptom. When there's decline in work, school, anything that you're doing, you're not able to function, but there is a decline, that's a symptom. Mood shifts. One day very happy, one day very sad, suddenly very excited, suddenly there's an explosion. Those mood changes, again, is a symptom of mental illness. Withdrawal, not talking to people, not getting involved in different activities, situations, relationships, any kind of a responsibility, again, is a symptom. Very sensitive. You know, small things you say, the person gets very either explosive or gets tearful, becomes extremely heightened in sensitivity. Sleep.
Susan,
Yeah.
if,
Yes.
if we are going through some of these symptoms, sometimes you feel down, sometimes you feel happy,
Right.
these different, does that mean we are going into some kind of mental issue?
Okay. So every condition that that is a mental health issue has a certain time time frame that you need to look at. Now, it is common that we may have some very bad days where we're very upset and we don't want to go out and we don't want to do anything. One day or maybe 2 days.
Yeah.
That doesn't qualify us for depression. What qualifies for depression is 2 weeks, a minimum of 2 weeks of being in that same state. That's what qualifies for depression.
Oh, okay.
Right? So each of this has a certain time frame. So all because you may say, Ayo, I was very anxious yesterday, maybe I'm mentally ill. No, that's not true. Okay? So don't isolate these symptoms and say, okay, I think I'm going crazy. It's not that way. It is, one is a combination of some of these symptoms, and the time frame is what we have to look at. Okay? Right. Then changes in sleep patterns or appetites. Again, all because you don't sleep 1 day, 2 day, that doesn't mean you're ill. It's, again, like we said, a time frame. Right? If usually people in depression don't sleep for months. Right? And that's how they begin to notice that there's something wrong. But then the criteria for depression is 2 weeks. 2 weeks, if there are problems in sleep patterns or appetites, is when you consider a diagnosis of depression.
Oh.
And problems of thinking clearly, ability to think, not having confusion in your mind. So these are major symptoms, and it's important to recognize some of these signs. That's why when you go to a doctor, some of the first things the doctor will ask you, did you sleep well? Are you eating properly? Are you gaining weight or are you losing weight? Because these are also common signs in mental health conditions, right? Then how are you feeling? What is your mood like? Are you worried? So these are all some of the ways that you get to understand that a person is dealing with some kind of a mental health challenge. Okay, so what are some warning signs of mental illness? When is it that you have to be alarmed? Okay. For example, if a person is feeling sad or withdrawn for more than 2 weeks, very often, just around 2 weeks ago, one young girl came to me and she was telling me, I think I mentioned this to you all, that her friend had committed suicide. And this boy who had committed suicide was with them. And, through just even before he had committed suicide, right? That it wasn't as noticeable for them to know that he was going through something. So we should have our eyes and ears opened to look out for people. I'm not saying look out for the whole world. Look out for people who are near you, people who you sit in class with, people who you're working with, people in your own family, right? So keep engaged with them to look and see if someone's going through something, right? Because you could be the one who actually supports and helps them through that difficult time. Trying to harm or end one's life or making plans to do so. So if they're talking about, I just want to die, life is not worth living, I wish I was dead. These are all, what do you say, signs, the warning signs that they may be going through some mental health. Out of control, risk-taking behavior that causes harm to self or others. Reckless driving. Just last week, I was speaking to someone who was saying, was going through something very significant, said that, I didn't care for my life. I was just driving rashly, hoping that I would die somewhere, right? So these are, again, warning signs. Sudden overwhelming fear for no reason, right? Racing heart, difficulty breathing, discomfort, physical discomfort. Again, indication of some sense of anxiety. Significant weight loss or gain. Seeing, hearing, or believing things that aren't real. Okay, I can hear someone talking, I can see something when you can't see. So again, I think it's important to, whenever you're hearing things like this, be careful to not quickly judge them as maybe demonic. They could be going through a mental health condition. All right, so take enough history to understand that, what they are going through. Then use of alcohol or drugs, changes in mood, behavior, personality, extreme difficulty concentrating, and intense worries or fears that get in the way of daily activities. So these are all certain warning signs of mental health illness that you will look at. Okay, what is...
Ma'am?
Yeah.
1 minute.
Yeah.
Sometimes you hear stories of people saying, my God, he was so happy last night. We really enjoyed. He was laughing so much. We never ever thought he's going to commit suicide or she, whatever. Right. So, yeah, how do you see that?
So, generally, and this may not, there may be certain exceptions, especially people who are contemplating suicide would have at some point attempted to reach out in some way, and which may not have been picked. And so what happens is that very thought of someone not caring or someone not picking it up becomes again a negative frame of reference, saying that no one cares, no one probably even will notice if I'm gone. So that's why, especially in close relationships, it's always good to ask of how are you doing, where are you at, and how's your how's your faith life, or what are you experiencing. Those conversations are very, very important.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And that's why meaningful conversations, one-on-one conversations, are always really helpful. Yes, sir.
Ma'am, but unfortunately, don't you think in Indian context or the times that we live in, when a genuine question of like, how are you is asked, most of them in fact tend to
Fine.
just say I'm fine, and despite not being fine. It's very rare you hear people saying, no, I'm not fine.
Mm, mm. Yeah.
Don't you?
So that's why, we have what God's given us, the ability to observe and sense, right? When someone is not doing okay, to actually notice and say, "Hey, I've noticed that you seem really upset or sad or whatever. What's going on? Is there anything I can help?" Yes, you use all your faculties God's given you to assess more than just words. Because even after counseling, we've understood that verbal communication is only 10-20%. The rest is all you get to understand a lot from the body language. So pick up on things like that. Okay. All right.
Actually, people with mental health, they themselves may not go for asking for help most often.
Yeah.
It is the friends, close ones who will notice some difference in them, and they will realize, oh, there is some help
Absolutely.
needed. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Now, when we're looking at types of mental health disorders, there's a broad classification that's given here. Okay. And I know there's a lot over here, but just to make a reference to a few, the ones that we talk about, what we commonly see, or what we commonly hear about, not see, what you hear about is what we call as anxiety disorders, right? The feeling of being restless, anxious about the future, anxious about the current, a sense of constant sense of fear. That's what we call as anxiety. And that is the most common mental health issue that you'd see. You'll have at least a good 1 out of 4 to 5 people who have that disorder. Then the other ones, such as psychotic disorders, mood disorders, are the major mental health issues. Yeah, the ones that are major. That is, they're outside of their reality. They're completely not insightful about what's happening around, right? They almost seem like as if they are in another world. Those kind of conditions, especially psychotic disorders like schizophrenia, mood disorders like mania, bipolar affective disorder, depression, they are major mental health issues that do need psychiatric treatment in the form of medication. All right. The anxiety disorders, depending on the severity of it, it's either through counseling or also with some point of medication. There are so addictions, alcohol addiction, drug addiction are also known as mental health disorders. Okay, it's been classified under mental health disorders. There's something called as eating disorders. Eating disorders are 1 or 2 that I'll name is they eat, they feel guilty, and they induce vomiting, right? Or they don't eat at all.
Bulimia.
Yes, bulimia, right? So these are again disorders. These are all body image disorders, which is they're very concerned about what food will do to their body. And so they have an unhealthy pattern of how food is seen. And so they either do not eat or they eat too much and then they try and expel it out.
Ma'am,
Okay.
since we are in Christian counseling,
Yeah.
how do you see prayer? Because at the time of Jesus or the apostles, they didn't have all this psychiatric help or, but mostly they went for prayer. So how do you see that today's world?
So just as much like in any other illness, you would recommend that people get the support and help they need from medical field, but that does not minimize the effect of what we have in our faith, which
Mm.
is prayer, which is deliverance, the power of the Holy Spirit to break away every kind of bondage. Because every form of illness, whether it be physical, mental health, is something that the enemy has bought in as a result of the fall,
True.
right?
True. Yeah.
So when we know that it's in the cross that we have victory, we go ahead and use our faith, our authority that we have to break away every bondage of illness, whether it be physical, mental health, any of it. So yes, prayer definitely has a big role,
Mm.
just as much as you would ask them to get the medical help that they need. You
Yeah.
wouldn't minimize that. They need to do that, and you're doing this knowing that this has power to help.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Let's close for a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and continue.